Hey everyone, my name's Calvin and welcome back to another watercolor tutorial for Procreate. So in today's video, I'm going to show you my process for painting cute cat people. Now there's two reasons I love to paint this kind of illustration, and the first one is cat people are super adorable, and then the second reason is it's easy to sketch these guys. Like the face is a circle, the body is a rectangle, like they got noodle arms. It couldn't be much easier than that, so you can just get really creative. Even if you're new to sketching, I think you'll be able to sketch different poses, different scenes, different outfits, and just focus on the creativity and not get so worried about the proportions or it being lifelike, because this kind of illustration is not about that. So I'm going to start out here with a blank watercolor paper texture in Procreate, and in this case I'm using the Fabriano mill paper texture. And for the brushes, I'm going to use the Regular Watercolor Brush Kit, and then optionally, I'm going to use the Scratchy pen brush kit. But the reason it's optional, or the reason the Scratchy pens are optional, is because you can use the fine liner pen in the regular brush kit, but I just love the kind of struggle that you have to go through when you use the Scratchy pens. It just creates a really interesting outline, and I think it prints out really nicely. So I've already got the sketch loaded in here. It's the very top layer, and I've set it to multiply. And I've also lowered the transparency just so I can barely see it, so it's not getting in the way too much. And this sketch is free for you guys. I'll include it in the description with a few more scenes, but I really want to encourage you to try to draw your own scenes, because I think you'll be surprised at how easy it is to draw these cat people in different positions, in different outfits. It's surprisingly easy. I'm going to start painting on a layer underneath the paper texture, just like you normally would, and I'm going to grab the abstract round brush, and I'm going to do the cat first, the silhouette of the cat. So I'll choose a kind of medium bluish gray color, and at a pretty large size, I'll just do a quick kind of random wash. And after that, I think I'll throw in a slightly darker color in a few areas. And then I'll grab the water blender and just mix this up a little bit. Now once I've got the main wash figured out, I'm going to use the eraser brush, and I'm going to set that to the fine liner pen. And at a really small size, I'm just going to go along the edge of the sketch and basically cut out the silhouette of the cat person. So I've got our cat here cut out, and now I want to remove all this extra watercolor going over the edge there. And I'm going to do that with the selection tool set to automatic. And I'm going to make an automatic selection that just covers the inside here, the silhouette of the cat. And I'm going to adjust the threshold until it totally fills out everything, but it doesn't go too far like that. I just want to select the silhouette of the cat. After that, I'm going to do copy and paste. And what that did is it cut out our selection and then pasted it on a layer above. So here's the original one, and then here's the copy. So I'm going to get rid of the original, and now the copy has all that extra watercolor removed. And you could, of course, erase it by hand, but I think this is just a good time-saving technique. Now next, I want to add a little bit of dimension to the body of the cat here, and usually it's enough just to lighten the middle area. So I'm going to do that with the selection tool. I'm going to set it to freehand and just make a selection like this that pretty much covers the face, the eyes, and then kind of the tummy area like that. Then I'll feather that out. And I'm going to go to the adjustments, curves, layer, and I'm just going to raise the bottom end. And see, it just lightens that selected area. And I want to do this because otherwise the cat ends up looking a little bit flat. There we go, that looks pretty good. And now I can go in and do the details of the face. And I'm going to do those on a different layer above our cat silhouette. And I'm going to use the fine liner pen for that. And I'll choose a nice color for the eye, maybe a kind of greenish yellow, and I'll just fill those out real quick. Now I think it's nice when the eyes have a kind of ombre, kind of color shift. So I'm going to do that with the freehand selection tool and just make a selection like this. And I'll feather it out. Then I'll go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and just shift the hue to introduce a kind of interesting secondary color in there. Now the pupils are easy. I'm going to do those with the fine liner pen as well. And I'll select a kind of darker version of that green. And those are really simple, just kind of little ovals like this. There we go. And next, I'm going to do the rest of the face details using the Scratchy pen brush kit. And I'm going to use the grunge lettering brush. Now, I don't recommend you do this totally in black, I think maybe a kind of middle color like that will look pretty good. Yeah, that's dark enough. And I'm just going to add the kind of eyeliner and then the rest of the details on the face. So that's it for the face. So I'm going to leave it at that point. I like to do the face kind of early on, as soon as possible, just because it helps me kind of see the rest of the illustration more clearly. And now I can move on and do the shirt real quick. And I'm going to do that on another layer. And I'm going to grab a kind of warm, light khaki color. And I'm going to go back to the regular brush kit. And I'm going to do the shirt with the fine liner pen. And once I have the outline, I can just drop in the color. It's just a really quick way to fill that out. And next, just to give this a little bit of dimension, I'm going to use the selection tool set to freehand and just make some shadows, kind of like this. And after I make the selection, I'll go to hue, saturation, and brightness and just darken it. And I'll do the same thing in a few other places, just to make this look a little bit less flat. Next, I want to add a really simple pattern to this shirt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection and then paint within that. So I'm going to make another layer here. I'm going to grab the selection tool, set to freehand, and I'm just going to select the area where I want the pattern to be. There we go. And now while that selection is active and we're on a separate layer, I can grab the fine liner pen and just make a simple kind of line pattern. And you see what's happening is it's only occurring within the selection. And that's going to help also bring out some of the depth and detail in the shirt. There we go. And once I've got a few lines, I'm going to set that layer to multiply, lower it to 0, and then just raise it up just until I have enough texture to make this shirt interesting, but not necessarily the center or the focal point of the illustration. Now the next thing I want to do is use the selection tool to give the cat some shadows kind of on the body. So I'm going to go to the layers panel and make sure the body of the cat or the silhouette of the cat is selected. Then using the selection tool set to freehand, I'm just going to make selections anywhere I want there to be a shadow, kind of like here for example. Then I'll go to hue, saturation, and brightness and just lower the brightness just of that area, just to give a little bit of separation there. And I'm going to go through the whole body of the cat and just add shadows wherever I think they'll look good. Now I'm going to move on from the cat just for now, but before I do that, I'll just merge all the layers associated with the cat together, just to keep this a little bit less complicated. And now I can move on and do some of the background elements. So I'm going to make another layer, and I'm going to make sure it's behind the cat. And the first thing I'm going to do is use the fine liner pen brush and fill out all these plant pots. Now those are all filled out and they look okay, but they're a little bit too flat. So I'm going to use the selection tool and add a little bit of a highlight. So I'll select one side of kind of each of these elements, just like that. I'll feather it out. Then I'll go to hue, saturation, and brightness and just brighten that side up a little bit. And I'll do the same thing to the pot down here. Next, I want to do the legs real quick, but I'm going to add those on a different layer. I'm going to make sure that's underneath the potted plants. And just using the fine liner pen brush again, and just kind of any random dark color, I'll just fill those out real quick. And I think these legs over here need a kind of shadow, so I'm going to use the freehand selection tool. And just make a random selection like that. Hue, saturation, and brightness, and then just darken the tops of those legs. There we go. And that's it for the plant pots and the plant stands, so I'll merge those together onto one layer. Then I'll make a layer above it, and I can move on and do the details of the plants themselves. And again, I'm going to do all of that with the fine liner pen brush that I did the pots with, but this time I'm going to change to a kind of greenish color, kind of a yellowish green, and I'm going to try to make sure each plant is a slightly different kind of shade of this green. Now at this point I can switch off the sketch. I don't think I need it anymore. And these plants look pretty good, but I want to add some color variation. So I'm going to use the selection tool set to freehand. Just make a random selection like that just covers a little bit of each of these plants. Then I'll feather it out quite a bit. Hue, saturation, and brightness, and I'll just shift the hue just to introduce a kind of secondary color in there. There we go, I think that looks pretty good. Now this scene is almost done. I've just got one more step to kind of finish this all up. So I'm going to merge everything together onto one layer, and I'm going to add an outline. And I'm going to do that on a layer above. And you could use the fine liner pen to do this, but I want to use the Scratchy pen brush kit, that same grunge lettering brush I did the kind of eyeliner with. And now I'm going to go over this entire illustration and add outlines, but I'm going to use an outline color that reflects what they're outlining. So for example, I'm not just going to use black. I'm going to grab a brown color to do the outline on this one, just like this. And then on the green plant items, I'm going to do an outline that's a little bit of a green color. And I'm going to go through the whole illustration just like this and add an outline wherever I think it looks good. And after I've got the outline done, I'm going to set the transparency of that outline layer to multiply, lower it to 0, and then just slowly raise it up until it's just at a good point where I get the contrast that I'm looking for. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. And I realize now I did forget to do the ears, so I'll do those real quick. I'm going to go back to the main artwork layer and select a kind of pink color for the ears. And this could be done as it is, but if you want, you can add a little shadow along the bottom. And I do think this helps with the ambiance of the scene. So I'm going to do that on a separate layer. I'm going to put it behind everything. I'm going to select a kind of a warm dark gray color. Then I'm going to go back to the regular brush kit and use the abstract round and just kind of rough that out. There we go. And then I'll lower the opacity to 0 and again just raise it up just until I can barely see it there. And there we go, this one is all done, and I love the way it printed out. I think scenes like this are really fun, really good confidence building exercises, even if you're new to painting in Procreate, even if you're new to painting illustrations like this. Now in the description, I'll put a handful of links where you can download different cat people scenes that you can color in using the process in this video, but I really want to encourage you to just give it a try. Try to draw your own scene, with your own cat person, and I think you'll find it's a lot easier than it looks. And that pretty much wraps it up, but as always, thank you so much for your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.